Welcome to Urban American Stories. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. The phone call that woke Thaddeus Mitchell at 3:47 a.m. made his heart freeze. After 3 months providing medical services in a remote region of Nepal, the last thing he expected to hear was that his property in Sedona, Arizona, had been turned into a commercial enterprise without his authorization. Dr. Mitchell, this is Raymond Delacroix, your neighbor. I know you're out of the country, but, well, there's something going on your property that you need to know about. The former retired sheriff's deep voice conveyed genuine concern. A woman called Melinda is building a spa here. She's already got a structure, employees, everything. She's even using your family history in her marketing. Thaddeus sat on the edge of the makeshift bed in the medical center, trying to process the information. The 5,000 square meter property had been passed down through generations in his family, a natural sanctuary with a protected spring that his grandfather, a Cherokee leader, had preserved for decades. Raymond, that's impossible. No one has permission to build anything there, replied Thaddeus, already accessing his laptop to check the security cameras installed on the property. To his horror, the images showed a structure complete with swimming pools, wooden decks, and even a paved parking lot. 48 hours later, Thaddeus landed at Phoenix International Airport. During the drive to Sedona, his lawyer, Marcus Holloway, updated him on the situation. This Melinda has managed to convince 15 people to work for her, has established partnerships with 3 of the main hotels in the area, and is charging astronomical amounts per day. The most surreal thing is that she's using her family's history as part of the mysticism of the place. When they arrived at the property, Thaddeus was paralyzed. The original gate had been replaced by an elaborate structure with the name Zen Serenity in gold letters. Luxurious cars occupied the parking lot, and people in white robes circulated around what used to be his private garden. A tall woman with platinum hair and white linen clothes approached with an artificial smile. "Ah, you must be Thaddeus Mitchell. What an honor to finally meet you. I'm Melinda, the visionary behind Zen Serenity. I've been waiting for your return to thank you personally for allowing us to transform this wonderful space into a healing sanctuary." Marcus intervened before Thaddeus could react. "Madam, there was no permission. Dr. Mitchell is the legal owner of this land and has not authorized any construction or commercial activity here." Melinda's smile didn't falter. "Oh dear, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I have all the necessary documents to operate here. Besides, we've multiplied the value of this property tenfold. Dr. Mitchell should thank us." Over the next few days, the situation turned into a legal nightmare. Melinda had submitted falsified documents to the town hall, obtained provisional permits, and, impressively, sued Thaddeus for corporate sabotage when he tried to stop the spa's activities. The local community was divided. Some, seduced by the promise of economic development and jobs, supported Melinda. Others, especially Sedona's oldest families, were horrified by the exploitation of the sacred spring and the appropriation of Cherokee history for marketing. "She's selling spring water in crystal bottles for $200 each," Raymond reported, showing Thaddeus a promotional flyer. "They say it's ancestral water blessed by Cherokee spirits." The investigation revealed that Melinda had managed to raise more than $2 million from investors, presenting herself as the rightful owner of the land. Her elaborate story included supposed spiritual connections to the land and visions that guided her there. "The most worrying thing is the environmental damage," explained Dr. Lauren Patterson, an environmental conservation specialist hired by Marcus. "The spring is being exploited beyond its capacity, and the constructions were made without any environmental impact study." Thaddeus spent sleepless nights watching from his temporary home as the spa lights illuminated what was once his haven of peace. Each morning brought a new surprise. New equipment being installed, more trees being removed, more cars parked on what was once sacred ground. "We'll get your property back," Thaddeus assured Marcus, organizing a pile of documents. "But we need to be strategic. Melinda has powerful connections and is playing a dangerous game." The final straw came when Melinda started organizing nightly spiritual ceremonies, using drums and chants that supposedly imitated Cherokee rituals. For Thaddeus, this wasn't just a violation of property. It was a desecration of his cultural heritage. My grandfather protected this land, not only for its natural beauty, but because it tells our story, Thaddeus explained during a meeting with the local tribal council. Every stone, every tree has a meaning, and now it's being turned into a new age theme park. The battle had only just begun, and Thaddeus knew that it would take all his strength and determination to confront not only a charismatic invader, but an entire system that had allowed the situation to reach this point. His family's legacy and the preservation of a sacred piece of Sedona depended on it. The first strategy meeting took place in Sedona's municipal library, where Thaddeus, Marcus, and a select group of allies met to discuss how to confront the Zen Serenity situation. Among those present was Diana Whitefeather, a Cherokee elder and close friend of Thaddeus' grandfather, who brought with her historical documents from the region. "Look at this, Thaddeus." Diana unrolled an old map on the table. "Your grandfather recorded every sacred spring in this region. The one on your property isn't just water. It's been a spiritual focal point for our people for generations." Marcus leafed through a pile of newly obtained documents on Melinda. "We found an interesting pattern. In the last 5 years, she's tried similar schemes in Colorado Springs and Taos, always targeting properties with historical or spiritual significance, using the same narrative of a mystical connection to the place." "And how she escaped the consequences so far?" questioned Raymond, who remained a crucial ally. "Manipulation and perfect timing," explained Marcus. "She operates during specific periods when the owners are away, quickly establishes a profitable operation, and, when confronted, uses aggressive legal tactics while continuing to make a profit. By the time the case reaches court, it has recouped its investment." Lauren Patterson, the environmental expert, projected recent images of the spring. "The situation is even more serious than we imagined. In addition to commercial exploitation, they're using chemicals in the pools that could contaminate the water table. If this continues for a few more weeks, the damage could be irreversible." Thaddeus felt his stomach turn with each new revelation. While he was away in Nepal treating victims of a natural disaster, his own land was suffering a different but equally devastating catastrophe. A knock on the door interrupted the meeting. Regina Martinez, one of the employees hired by Melinda, entered hesitantly. "Dr. Mitchell, I need to talk to you. There's something you need to know about what's really going on at the spa." Regina revealed that Melinda wasn't just selling spa services. She was collecting wealthy clients' personal information, including financial data and secrets shared during healing sessions. She keeps detailed files. Some clients are public figures, politicians, executives. "I think that's why no one wants to face her openly." Regina's revelation completely changed the dynamics of the situation. It wasn't just a question of trespass property. It was an elaborate scheme of manipulation and possible blackmail. This explains why requests for an investigation are being blocked at City Hall, Marcus noted. But it also gives us a new angle to attack legally. Diana, who had been silent for a while, finally spoke up. "There's something else. The spring on your land, Thaddeus, is not just water. According to our records, it contains unique levels of minerals that may have real medicinal properties. Your grandfather was studying it before he passed away, and I bet Melinda discovered it," Raymond added. "She didn't choose her property by chance." The discussion was interrupted by a notification on Thaddeus' cell phone. An email from the Water Resources Department informing him that a preliminary analysis of the spring water had detected traces of contamination. "It's destroying decades of preservation in a matter of weeks," Thaddeus muttered, feeling the weight of generations of land guardians on his shoulders. The team began to develop a plan on several fronts: legal, environmental, and community. Marcus would initiate simultaneous actions in different instances. Lauren would document the environmental damage, and Diana would mobilize the Cherokee community to protest against cultural appropriation. Regina agreed to continue working at the spa as an informant, discreetly documenting suspicious activities. "But be careful," she warned. "Melinda has cameras everywhere and monitors staff communications." As the meeting drew to a close, Thaddeus received another disturbing piece of news. Melinda had just announced an ancestral healing festival for next weekend, promising authentic Cherokee rituals and mystical experiences with sacred water. She's ramping up operations, Marcus noted. She knows we're moving against her and wants to maximize profits before we can act. On the way back to his temporary accommodation, Thaddeus stopped at the gazebo that overlooked his property. The spa lights flickered in the darkness, like artificial fireflies desecrating the natural serenity of the place. As he watched, a group of people in white robes formed a circle in the garden, taking part in some invented ritual that parroted the sacred traditions of their people. Diana joined them in the gazebo. "Your grandfather always said that the earth has its own way of defending itself," she said, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "But sometimes it needs warriors willing to fight for it." Thaddeus nodded, determined. The battle for the soul of his ancestral land was just beginning, and he was prepared to use every weapon at his disposal, legal, environmental, and spiritual, to restore true serenity to the place his family had protected for generations. The ancestral healing festival announced by Melinda became the fuse Thaddeus needed to mobilize the community. On the morning of the event, more than 200 members of the Cherokee tribe, led by Diana Whitefeather, formed a peaceful protest line at the entrance to the spa. Dressed in traditional costumes, they chanted authentic chants that contrasted dramatically with the New Age music emanating from the Zen Serenity speakers. "This is cultural exploitation," declared Diana to the local news cameras that had arrived to cover the protest. "This woman is selling a fake, commercialized version of our sacred traditions." Melinda tried to turn the situation in her favor, coming out to welcome the protesters with her characteristic artificial smile. "Dear spiritual brothers and sisters, we are all connected by the same universal energy. Why don't we unite our knowledge and harmony?" The answer came from Joseph Running Bear, a respected tribal elder. "You are selling bottles of water from our sacred spring for $200. That's not harmony, that's desecration." As the confrontation unfolded at the entrance to the spa, Marcus and his legal team scored an important victory behind the scenes. Regina, the undercover employee, had provided crucial evidence about Melinda's questionable practices, including emails that proved she knew all along that the land didn't belong to her. "We found something even more serious," Marcus revealed during an emergency meeting with Thaddeus. Melinda was mixing non-FDA-approved substances into the spring water, promising miraculous effects to customers. "We have testimonies from 3 people who developed health problems after consuming it," Lauren Patterson added. The laboratory analysis confirmed it. In addition to contaminating the pools, she was adding experimental compounds to the bottled water. "It's a federal violation." The confrontation reached its climax when Melinda, pressured by the presence of the media and protesters, tried a desperate move. She called an impromptu press conference in the spa's garden. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, her voice trembling slightly, "I want to reveal that I have documents proving that this property was, in fact, sold to me through a verbal agreement with a member of the Mitchell family. I have witnesses who will confirm this." Thaddeus felt his blood run cold. It was a blatant lie, but he knew how skilled Melinda was at manipulating narratives. However, she hadn't counted on the presence of Raymond Delacroix, who approached the microphone. "As a former sheriff of this town and a neighbor of the Mitchells for 40 years, I can attest that this is impossible," he declared. "Furthermore, I have security footage showing exactly when and how the lady broke into this property, starting construction in the middle of the night." The revelation caused an uproar among the journalists present. Melinda tried to keep her composure, but her facade was beginning to crumble. Then Regina, choosing her moment, approached with a folder of documents. "Mrs. Blackwood," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "are these the records you asked me to destroy? The ones about the customers who had adverse reactions to the treated water?" Melinda's face lost all color. Her eyes scanned the crowd, looking for an escape route, but she was surrounded by cameras and reporters eager for answers. At that moment, 3 federal police vehicles entered the property. Marcus had coordinated with the authorities the exact moment to present the evidence of interstate fraud and environmental violations. "Ms. Blackwood," announced one of the agents, "we need you to come with us to answer some questions about your business activities in Colorado Springs, Taos, and now here in Sedona." As Melinda was escorted off the property, her clients, Many still in bathrobes, watched in astonishment. Diana seized the moment to address them. This land is sacred not because someone decided to commercialize it, but because generations have protected and respected it. You are welcome to get to know our true history and traditions, but not through cheap imitations sold as luxury. In the following weeks, the dismantling of Serenity Zen revealed the extent of the damage caused. The spring would need months to recover from the contamination, and the illegally built structures would have to be carefully removed so as not to cause further environmental impact. Thaddeus, working with the Cherokee community and environmental experts, developed a restoration plan that respected both nature and the site's history. Employees cheated by Melinda received support to find new jobs, and aggrieved investors formed a group to seek legal redress. You know, Diana said to Thaddeus as they watched the sun set over the now silent property, your absence doing humanitarian work in Nepal was no coincidence. Melinda studied her patterns, waited for the right moment, but she didn't understand that this land has protectors beyond those she could see. Thaddeus nodded, feeling the weight of the generations that had guarded that place before him. The legal battle was not yet fully won, but the truth had prevailed. Now, the real work of healing began, not the kind sold in crystal bottles, but the kind that comes from respecting the land and the traditions that have kept it sacred for so long. The federal investigation into Melinda Blackwood revealed a pattern of criminal activity far more extensive than initially suspected. Agents uncovered an elaborate scheme that stretched across 5 states, with Zen Serenity being just the tip of the iceberg. We found offshore accounts linked to similar operations in Aspen, Santa Fe, and even Hawaii, explained Special Agent Catherine Reese during a confidential meeting with Thaddeus and Marcus. Ms. Blackwood wasn't just selling spa days and sacred water. She was laundering money through these operations. Marcus' office had been transformed into a makeshift operations center. The walls, once decorated with diplomas and legal certifications, now displayed maps and diagrams connecting Melinda's various fraudulent ventures. Regina, who continued to cooperate with the authorities, brought an even more disturbing revelation. She had a safe hidden in the main meditation room, said Regina, depositing a folder on the table. I found that before the feds arrived. The document revealed that Melinda had hired private investigators to track down owners of land with historical or spiritual value, specifically looking for those who would be temporarily absent. It was no coincidence that she chose the moment you were in Nepal, Marcus observed, leafing through the papers. She had informants in humanitarian organizations, monitoring when people like you would be out of the country. Diana Whitefeather, who had become a constant force in the fight to recover the property, brought her own discovery. Her spiritual ceremonies weren't just cultural appropriation, they were psychological manipulation sessions. We have testimonies from clients who were induced to make large donations during altered states of consciousness. The situation became even more complex when Lauren Patterson identified specific chemical compounds in the spring water samples. She was adding a mixture of natural psychoactive substances to the water. In small doses, they caused feelings of euphoria and well-being. That's why the clients were so dependent on the therapies. Thaddeus spent hours reviewing the medical records of affected clients. As a doctor, he was horrified by the deliberate manipulation of people's health. She was basically drugging people without their knowledge, selling it as spiritual healing. Raymond, using his contacts in the retired police force, discovered that Melinda had changed her name at least 3 times in the last 10 years. She's been Michelle Bennett in Colorado, Amanda Pierce in Nevada, and now Melinda Blackwood, each identity associated with a new scam. The pressure increased when the national media began covering the case. The Wall Street Journal published an extensive report on the scam, highlighting how Melinda had exploited the growing interest in spirituality and wellness to build her fraudulent empire. The ironic thing, commented Diana during a break between meetings, is that the spring really does have special properties. Her grandfather had documented it scientifically. Thaddeus. She didn't need to add anything to the water. Nature had already done its job. The Sedona community began to speak out more openly. Former spa clients organized a support group for people who had been financially and emotionally manipulated. Local hotels that had partnered with Serenity Zen publicly canceled their contracts. We need to think beyond legal punishment, Thaddeus suggested during a meeting with the team. We have to find a way to turn this into something positive for the community. The idea began to take shape when Lauren presented her final report on the environmental recovery of the spring. With the right treatment in time, the water will return to its natural state. But we need to establish permanent protection protocols. Marcus, always thinking about the legal implications, came up with a proposal. We could create a foundation, with representatives of the Cherokee tribe and environmental experts on the board, turn the property into a center for studies on traditional medicine and environmental preservation. Diana smiled, recognizing echoes of Thaddeus' grandfather's original vision in the plan. Your grandfather always said that traditional knowledge and modern science didn't have to be enemies. He dreamed of a place where both could coexist and strengthen each other. As they worked out the details of the project, more of Melinda's victims in other states began to come forward. Their stories followed a similar pattern. Properties with cultural significance invaded, natural resources exploited, and vulnerable people manipulated. Each new testimony strengthens our case, Marcus explained. But more importantly, it helps us understand how to prevent this from happening again. Aja Reese returned with new information about the investors Melinda had duped. Some are people genuinely interested in well-being and spirituality. Others were businessmen looking for a quick profit. All were manipulated by the elaborate narrative she constructed. Thaddeus, watching the sunset through the office window, reflected on how such a negative situation was, ironically, bringing the community together in unexpected ways. The fight to reclaim their property had turned into a larger movement for transparency, cultural respect, and environmental protection. Maybe, he thought out loud, we needed this crisis to wake up and value what really matters. The work was far from over, but for the first time since his return from Nepal, Thaddeus felt that his family's legacy would not only survive, but emerge stronger from this ordeal. The sun was rising over Sedona as a team of environmental restoration experts began work on the Mitchell property. Thaddeus watched, alongside Diana Whitefeather, as specialized equipment carefully removed the last structures of Zen serenity. It's like watching a wound being cleaned, commented Diana, her words carrying the weight of ancient wisdom. The land can finally breathe again. The last few months had been a whirlwind of events. Melinda Blackwood's trial had revealed a network of crimes that extended far beyond Sedona. The holistic entrepreneur had been sentenced to 15 years in prison for multiple charges, including fraud, money laundering, and environmental violations. Dr. Mitchell called Lauren Patterson, approaching with a tablet in her hands. The most recent analyses of the spring show a significant improvement. The contamination is finally receding to natural levels. The news brought a genuine smile to Thaddeus' face. The damage caused by the chemicals that Melinda had introduced into the sacred water had been one of his biggest concerns. The recovery of the spring symbolized something greater, the possibility of healing and renewal. Marcus arrived on the scene with more news. The City Council unanimously approved our proposal for the Mitchell Cherokee Study and Preservation Center. The foundation will have permanent protected status. The project, developed in collaboration between Thaddeus, the Cherokee community, and environmental experts, would transform the property into a research center dedicated to studying the natural medicinal properties of the region, combining traditional knowledge with modern science. Raymond, who remained a crucial supporter, brought a group of university students interested in participating in the Future Center's internship program. These young people want to learn about traditional medicine and environmental conservation. Your grandfather would be proud, Thaddeus. The mention of his grandfather touched Thaddeus' heart. During the cleaning of the spa structures, a surprising discovery had been made. A diary buried next to the spring, protected in a waterproof box. It was a detailed record of his grandfather's research into the unique properties of the local water. He was decades ahead of his time, Thaddeus explained to the students, showing them the carefully preserved diary. He combined ancestral knowledge with scientific methodology to document how different minerals in the water interact with the human body. The group of former spa employees, led by Regina, had reorganized into a wellness cooperative, offering legitimate therapeutic services at a new location in the city. We learned the difference between exploitation and respect, Regina said during a visit to the center under construction. Agent Reese returned to Sedona for one last update. The investors harmed by Melinda have managed to recover a significant part of their funds. More importantly, many of them have decided to reinvest in your project, Dr. Mitchell. They believe in the vision of a center that combines healing and preservation in an ethical way. Diana organized a ceremony to purify the land, conducted by Cherokee elders. This time, there were no cameras or VIP tickets, just genuine respect for the land and its traditions. Sacred cedar smoke rose into the sky as ancestral chants echoed through the valley. The circle is complete, observed Diana, as they walked through the grounds after the ceremony. His absence in Nepal, which Melinda saw as an opportunity for destruction, actually prepared him for this healing mission in his own land. The Mitchell Cherokee Center began to take shape. Architects specializing in sustainable construction developed structures that integrated harmoniously with the natural landscape. Research laboratories were equipped with state-of-the-art technology, while spaces for traditional ceremonies were preserved in their sacred simplicity. "We have found the balance that your grandfather always sought," commented Marcus, looking at the finished plans. "A place where science and tradition don't compete, but complement each other." The story of Zen serenity and its transformation into a legitimate study center has become a case study in universities, discussing business ethics, property rights, and cultural preservation. Thaddeus was invited to lecture on the subject, sharing the lessons learned. "True luxury," he said in his presentations, "is not in artificial spas or manufactured rituals, but in respect for the land and the knowledge it holds." A year after the recovery began, the spring started flowing again in full force. Analyses confirmed it. The water had regained its unique properties, now protected by strict preservation protocols. "Look," Diana said to Thaddeus one quiet afternoon, pointing to a young sprout growing between the rocks near the spring. "Sometimes we need something to be destroyed to make room for new growth." The Mitchell Cherokee Center has become a model for how historic and sacred properties can be preserved and used responsibly. Researchers, students, and genuine spiritual seekers have found there a space for learning and reverence. Thaddeus, watching the sunset over his reclaimed land, finally felt peace. His family's legacy had not only survived the attempted exploitation, but had emerged stronger and with an even clearer purpose: to be a beacon of knowledge, respect, and true healing for future generations. The land, as his grandfather had always said, had its own guardians. And now, more than ever, Thaddeus understood that being one of them was both a privilege and a sacred responsibility.